Let's begin today's video. The immune community in Ireland. On the Antrim Hills of Ireland, researchers have discovered traces of a small community that survived continuously for nearly a millennium. This group managed to endure a series of major historical upheavals, including the European famines, the Black Death, the Irish potato famine, and severe climate periods such as the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. Archaeological evidence, soil sample analysis, and population records all show that mortality rates from disease and famine here remained remarkably low compared to neighboring areas. Scientists compared the social structure and livelihood patterns of this village to other communities across the country. The key difference was a completely free social model. There were no landlords or tenancy systems, and every member of the village had the autonomy to decide their own farming methods, crop choices, or even switch to hunting when conditions changed. This organization allowed the community to adapt proactively to risks such as crop failures, epidemics, or climate fluctuations, avoiding dependence on outside factors like merchants or exploitative relationships with landowners. A diversified livelihood model also contributed to their stability. Analysis of pollen and peat core samples showed that residents frequently rotated between farming, animal husbandry, and utilizing natural resources, thus spreading risk instead of depending on a single food source. Additionally, the absence of rent or land tax payments allowed the community to preserve their food reserves, minimizing the risk of total loss in bad years. By the early 20th century, this community gradually faded as the younger generations migrated to the cities. However, the case of this village continues to be a subject of research on social resilience and the role of community organization in facing environmental crises, disease outbreaks, and prolonged economic instability. The murderous king of Yemen. According to historical records from the Arabian Peninsula at the end of the 5th century, the kingdom of Yemen once underwent a period of rule under a king named Du Shah. He was noted as holding absolute power for nearly 3 decades, with a string of actions described as systematic killings, primarily targeting members of the nobility or powerful families within the royal court. Ancient documents report that Du Shah would often lure the descendants of these influential families to his palace and then carry out executions, mainly through torture and public executions. These acts served both to consolidate his personal power and to demonstrate complete control over the native aristocracy. Du Shah's activities continued until his behavior provoked a powerful backlash from the elite families. An assassination was organized by members of the nobility, resulting in Du Shah being killed in his own residence. After his death, his body was dealt with. As a warning, his head was displayed publicly to deter others from abusing power or carrying out mass killings within the royal dynasty. The case of Du Shah highlights the interaction between absolute centralized power and social control mechanisms through violence in ancient Middle Eastern dynasties. It also raises questions about the possibility of maintaining personal authority within a stratified and complex social structure, where noble resistance could lead to regime change. From a social science perspective, this is an example of the boundary between legitimate authority and unlawful violence, as well as the inevitable consequences of extreme rule on the historical progression of ancient kingdoms. The origin of DNA from meteorites. Recent studies of meteorites that have fallen to Earth have led to an important discovery related to the origin of genetic compounds. Scientists analyzing samples from multiple ancient meteorites have identified all 4 chemical components that make up DNA: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. These compounds form the basis of the genetic code for all living organisms on Earth today. This finding has sparked the hypothesis that the foundational compounds for life may have formed in outer space, accumulated within interstellar molecular clouds, and then arrived on early Earth via meteorites and comets. This process could have provided the initial raw materials for chemical reactions that produced primitive RNA and DNA molecules, setting the stage for the development of simple life forms on Earth. Isotope and chemical structure analysis of the nucleotides found on meteorites indicates that they are not the product of biological processes on Earth, but were formed in the material environment of space under unique chemical conditions. This leads to the idea that life on Earth may be the result of material exchange between planets, not solely of spontaneous chemical reactions within the Earth itself. Based on experimental data, many scientists have questioned whether these genetic materials exist elsewhere in the universe, and whether life could arise on other planets if conditions similar to Earth's were present. The discovery of all 4 basic components of DNA on meteorites not only expands research into the origins of life, but also fuels hypotheses about the possibility of extraterrestrial life built upon universal chemical foundations. This topic remains a major focus in the fields of astrobiology and prebiotic chemistry, laying the groundwork for deeper research into the formation and evolution of genetic material in space. The mystery of prehistoric stone, messages in Scotland and America. Archaeologists have found numerous ancient stones across the Scottish Highlands bearing a system of carved symbols that repeat certain features, most notably geometric shapes, concentric curves, and unidentified pictorial motifs. Thousands of such stones are scattered in places like Kilmartin Glen and northern coastal sites. The origin and initial meaning of these symbols remain undeciphered, but they likely served as a form of communication among prehistoric communities, reflecting cultural traits, belief systems, or ancient territorial markers. What is striking is that almost identical motifs appear on soapstone rocks in North Carolina, USA, most famously on the Judaculla rock preserved and revered by the Cherokee people. The symbols on Judaculla depict human-like figures with an unusual number of fingers, spirals, incisions, and animal shapes, forming a complex system that even modern researchers have yet to fully decode. Cherokee oral tradition tells of Judaculla, a giant, powerful entity with 7 fingers who is said to have left his mark on the stone as a natural boundary between territories. The similarities in symbols, layout, and carving techniques between the stones in Scotland and North Carolina have given rise to theories about possible connections or cultural diffusion across the Atlantic in prehistoric times. Some researchers question whether migrations or interactions from Europe to America may have occurred before modern historical records, or whether these are simply examples of parallel cultural evolution in 2 isolated regions. Comparative studies of archaeological dating, carving styles, and the symbolic meanings have yet to reach a definitive conclusion, but they suggest that these prehistoric symbol systems may have had a far wider reach than traditionally assumed. The layers of mythology surrounding these symbols help preserve collective memory of unexplained phenomena, such as the appearance of the giant Judaculla in Cherokee culture, or the local Scottish legends of deities, giants, or supernatural beings. From a scientific perspective, the stone symbols reflect a need for communication and boundary marking, but they also raise questions about the level of interaction between ancient populations on opposite sides of the Atlantic. To this day, the striking similarity between the Scottish stones and Judaculla rock remains one of archaeology's great mysteries, posing new questions about the connections between collective memory, indigenous beliefs, and the possibility of transcontinental links in prehistory. The story of strange animal species. Fossil research and genetic data from many ancient animal species in polar regions reveal a complex history of adaptation under extreme environmental pressures. During periods of global warming, the polar areas once supported far richer and more diverse ecosystems than exist today. Large mammals, such as mammoths, woolly rhinos, ancient bears, and large predatory beasts were once widespread across the icy steppes of Siberia and North America. Radiocarbon isotope analyses of bones and teeth indicate intricate food chains, highlighting the connections between large herbivores and their predators, as well as the population's dependence on brief growing seasons. Many small mammals and primates once thrived in the polar regions during the Eocene, a period of global warmth when coniferous and broad-leaved forests dominated. Genetic markers collected from fossils reveal changes in bone structure, teeth, fur, and physiological adjustments that helped animals maintain thermal balance and remain active under low-light conditions. Comparative anatomical data from large marine reptiles such as plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs in near-polar seas also illustrate significant morphological diversity, reflecting clear ecological differentiation, with some species specializing in eating fish or squid, and others adapted for hunting large prey thanks to powerful jaws and flexible fin structures. Ancient bird and mammal populations in Antarctica once included giant penguins, large raptors, and other flightless birds, as shown by fossil bone analyses from ancient sedimentary deposits. Some populations developed highly specialized biological features such as thick bones, optimal insulating feathers, the ability to store fat, and efficient nutrient metabolism to survive periods of food scarcity. In glacial lakes and icy rivers, certain fish, amphibians, insects, and mollusks evolved antifreeze mechanisms in their blood, forming specialized proteins to prevent cell freezing. Some species developed elongated life cycles, deep hibernation phases, or altered body structures suited to frozen environments. Fossil samples and genetic analyses show that this evolutionary process was discontinuous, closely tied to climate changes, migrations, and the spread of populations across continents. Modern observations of polar animals such as polar bears, Arctic wolves, reindeer, Arctic foxes, and cold-water fish reveal a tendency to preserve and continue ancient adaptive traits. The study of these animals' genomes has made it possible to identify specific genetic mutations responsible for lipid metabolism, temperature regulation, seasonal coat changes, and circadian rhythms suited to changing light conditions. These discoveries contribute to building evolutionary and adaptation models for polar animals, providing valuable data for biodiversity conservation in the context of modern climate change. The City of Giants in the Grand Canyon. Deep within the Grand Canyon, the story of a city of giants has fueled debate for over a century. According to an article published in the Arizona Gazette in 1909, explorer G.E. Kincaid discovered the entrance to a vast cave system perched high on a steep cliff. After gaining access to the cave and descending further inside, Kincaid described a network of tunnels and underground chambers extending more than 600 meters below the surface. There, he claimed to find multiple mummies significantly larger than modern humans, each wrapped in dark cloth and seated on large stone chairs. In addition, the underground city contained numerous copper artifacts, stone tablets carved with hieroglyphics resembling Egyptian writing, and stone statues in meditative poses, holding lotus flowers, details often seen in Buddhist art. The records describe these artifacts as having a blended style, making their cultural origin difficult to pinpoint. Some objects are reminiscent of ancient Egyptian metallurgical techniques, while others seem closer to old Asian civilizations. Even the inscribed tablets Kincaid collected have yet to be explained in terms of origin or true meaning. The most striking detail lies in the mummies themselves, estimated to be over 2.7 meters tall, dominating the shadowy spaces of the underground city. The Arizona Gazette report asserted that the expedition was funded by the Smithsonian Institution, one of America's most prestigious research centers at the time. However, critics argue that the entire account was a product of journalistic imagination or conspiracy theories. Subsequently, no verifiable documents about G.E. Kincaid have surfaced, and no official statements from the Smithsonian have ever confirmed such a discovery. The absence of archaeological evidence, along with restricted access to the Grand Canyon area, has only deepened skepticism about the veracity of this legend. Amid these unverified details, the story of the City of Giants remains open to speculation. It could be a modern myth, a journalistic hoax, or perhaps the only clue to a civilization that once thrived and then vanished beneath North America's surface. So far, all theories remain subject to debate, leaving a significant gap in the archaeological history of the Grand Canyon region. Pa-de-Ha in Colombia has become a focal point for both archaeologists and researchers of unexplained phenomena. Located near the city of Bogotá, this mountain is notable for the frequent appearance of unidentified lights in the sky. Every week, numerous research teams and local residents gather here to observe luminous objects moving above the mountain's summit. The phenomenon has yet to be fully explained from a physics or meteorological perspective, despite being recorded many times using modern imaging equipment. Historically, Pa-de-Ha is closely linked to the Mua people, a native community that inhabited this region for centuries. According to archaeological and oral records, the Mua regarded the mountain as a major spiritual center, where they conducted religious ceremonies, including sacrificial rites. Material evidence such as archaeological remains and historical documents shows that these rituals were intended to maintain social order and protect the community from external threats. When Spanish colonizers entered the area, many community members chose to end their lives here to preserve collective honor, resulting in a chain of events with lasting psychological and cultural impact on the region. Researchers of anomalous phenomena, most notably engineer William Chavez Ariza, have conducted long-term observations spanning decades and produced numerous reports on unidentified flying objects in this area. Collected data includes photos, videos, and records of unusual radiation, though there is not yet sufficient scientific evidence to confirm the origins of these phenomena. Some theories suggest a connection between the unique geological energy fields of Pardaha and the frequent appearance of unidentified lights, but such hypotheses require further verification through fieldwork and interdisciplinary analysis. Pardaha stands as a prime example of the interplay between geology, history, culture, and unexplained natural phenomena. It is one of South America's most prominent sites for both archaeology and anomalous research, as it combines remnants of indigenous culture with a series of physical phenomena whose sources remain unidentified, laying the groundwork for future interdisciplinary studies. The mystery of dark DNA and ancient symbols. Recent advances in molecular biology have introduced the concept of dark DNA, segments of genetic material present in the genome whose specific functions remain undetermined or undecipherable with current technology. Although these dark DNA segments make up a significant proportion of an organism's genome, they do not encode proteins. However, evidence suggests that they play important roles in regulating genetic activity, stabilizing chromosome structures, and interacting with environmental factors. The existence of dark DNA poses a major challenge for genetics, as both their structure and biological impact remain shrouded in mystery, much like the concept of dark matter in cosmology. At the same time, archaeology and the study of symbols reveal that since ancient Sumerian times, the image of two snakes entwined around a staff has appeared on artifacts and reliefs. This motif later became a medical symbol in many civilizations, from Greece to Rome. The symbol carries many interpretations. It may represent life, rebirth, or intervention in the transmission of knowledge and biological energy. This image still appears on modern medical emblems and remains a topic of interest for researchers in both cultural and biological fields. Drawing from these similarities between ancient genetic symbols and discoveries about dark DNA, a hypothesis has emerged suggesting the possibility of external intervention in human evolution, especially in light of myths and legends about the arrival of gods or bringers of knowledge in many ancient civilizations. Some believe that the distinctive changes in the human genome compared to our closest primate relatives might reflect traces of outside influence, although scientific evidence for this theory remains unconfirmed. Recent studies in molecular biology and biomedicine show that psychosocial factors such as positive emotions and resilience to stress can affect DNA activity, particularly in non-coding regions. Experiments on groups under psychological pressure have shown that the structure and function of mitochondria are altered by changes in emotion, influencing metabolism and immune responses. The potential for mental states to impact DNA is under further investigation, opening new avenues for health interventions based not only on genetics, but also on living conditions and mental environment. From both archaeological and biological discoveries, the question of the origins of ancient genetic symbols, the role of dark DNA, and the possible influence of consciousness on genetic material remains a multidisciplinary research topic, bridging archaeology, genetics, and neuroscience. Evan Culture Mounds. The Evans Culture Mounds in Louisiana, USA, are an archaeological site dating back approximately 5,400 years, predating both the Egyptian pyramids and Stonehenge. This area consists of 11 large earthen mounds connected by raised causeways, forming one of the largest prehistoric earthwork complexes in North America. These mounds were built by the Evans community, a group who relied on hunting and gathering, and were thought not to have developed complex social systems or large-scale labor organization. However, archaeological investigations have shown that the construction of these mounds continued uninterrupted for 700 years, indicating stable social maintenance as well as coordinated labor capacity across multiple generations. Archaeologists have discovered numerous artifacts deep within the mound layers, including stone beads, bone tools, fishing hooks, and various items used in daily life. These finds point to an economy based primarily on the use of local natural resources. However, the exact structure and purpose of the mounds remain unclear. No surface architecture or signs of collective burials have been found atop the mounds, fueling theories about their real function. Perhaps they served as ceremonial centers, community gathering places, or astronomical markers. Despite many theories, there is still no conclusive archaeological evidence explaining the reason for the construction of these mounds. Stratigraphic data and field surveys consistently reveal a scale and complexity that far exceed expectations for a hunter-gatherer society. As a result, the Evans culture mounds stand as powerful evidence of social organization, environmental adaptation, and the creative potential of prehistoric North American populations. This site is also among the rare monuments capable of providing new data for the study of the formation of early cultural centers in the Americas, well before the rise of urban civilizations. Legends of the Yeti and Wild People. Legends of the Himalayan Yeti and northern wild people, as well as anthropological accounts of Zana in Russia, have attracted the interest of multiple fields, from archaeology and genetics to social anthropology. In the folklore of the Himalayas, the Yeti is described as a human-like creature of great size, walking upright, covered in thick hair, and living in remote snowy mountains or ancient forests. Stories of unusually large footprints in the snow, strange nighttime noises, and distant moving figures are often cited to support belief in the Yeti. Many expeditions have sought physical evidence, but most samples such as hair, fur, or tracks have been identified as belonging to familiar local animals like the Himalayan brown bear. The case of Zana in the Caucasus Mountains of southern Russia in the 19th century offers another perspective on the link between legend and reality. According to historical and anthropological records, Zana was found living in a village and described as having a distinctive appearance, large stature, abundant body hair, strong cold resistance, and semi-wild behavior. Recent genetic analysis of Zana's descendants shows she was human of the Homo sapiens group, but may have displayed unique morphological features resulting from interbreeding or isolated evolution in a specific geographic environment. This case suggests that stories of wild people sometimes arise from genetic and anthropological phenomena rather than the existence of a wholly separate species. Studies of the relationship between ancient humans and modern monster legends focus on analyzing ancient genomes, examining skeletal, dental, and fossil remains, and comparing physical features with those of modern populations. Archaeological and ancient genetic data reveal that, during the course of evolution, there were populations of humans with very different appearances and environmental adaptations. Some vanished, while others contributed to the genetic heritage of modern humans. Many tales of yetis, wild people, and mountain monsters may reflect collective memories of ancient or anomalous human groups who coexisted alongside mainstream populations during their expansion into new territories. Decoding these legends requires not only folklore analysis, but also a combination of archaeology, genetics, morphological anthropology, and evolutionary ecology. The results suggest that legends of yetis and wild people may reflect a blend of memory about archaic humans, genetic diversity, and localized evolutionary events, thereby expanding our understanding of human development and the cultural ecological systems of both northern and high mountain regions. Cocknow Stone. The Cocknow Stone in West Dunbartonshire, Scotland, is one of Europe's most remarkable carved stones, dating back to the Bronze Age, around 5,000 years ago. This massive slab measures over 12 meters in length and more than 7 meters in width. Its surface features more than 90 motifs, including concentric circles, spirals, and unidentified geometric symbols. The discovery of the stone in 1887 sparked extensive debate about the stone carving techniques and symbolic knowledge of Scotland's ancient inhabitants. The patterns on the Cocknow stone remain undeciphered, and no links have been found to any known system of characters or languages that once existed in the area. Most carvings are made up of interlocking circles, small grooves, connecting lines, and deeply incised dots. Archaeological studies show that some motifs resemble prehistoric rock art found elsewhere in Europe, but the complexity of the Cocknow stone is considered exceptional compared to many sites of the same era. There is still no consensus about the function of the Cocknow stone. Some researchers believe the slab may be a primitive astronomical map, used to track celestial events or mark cycles of time. Others suggest it may have served as a ritual site for religious activities, or simply as a territorial marker representing community ownership. However, no archaeological evidence has been found to confirm any of these theories. In 1965, the stone was deliberately buried to prevent further vandalism and damage from environmental exposure. In 2015, a team of archaeologists from the University of Glasgow excavated the site and recorded every detail of the patterns using advanced scanning technology, paving the way for deeper research into these symbols in the future. Today, the Cocknow stone stands as a classic example of Scotland's prehistoric mysteries, and raises questions about the relationship between symbolic thinking, craft skills, and social function within ancient European communities. Nagarjunakonda. Nagarjunakonda, located in the state of Andhra Pradesh, is one of South Asia's most important Buddhist archaeological sites. This area was once the center of the Ikshvaku kingdom in the 3rd and 4th centuries, playing a significant role in spreading Buddhism throughout southern India. Since the 1920s, Nagarjunakonda has revealed numerous ruins of temples, monasteries, stupas, inscriptions, sculptures, and a wide range of religious artifacts linked to the daily life of ancient Buddhist monastic communities. Archaeological work has shown that many structures and artifacts at Nagarjunakonda display characteristics typical of early Buddhist art at the dawn of the Common Era. The most prominent features are the large stupas, which once housed relics and devotional objects. In addition, hundreds of Sanskrit and Pali inscriptions record historical events, construction activities, and the contributions of kings and lay supporters. These findings reveal that Nagarjunakonda was once an international Buddhist center, attracting missionary groups from many regions of South and Southeast Asia, and even showing signs of interaction with Mediterranean areas. The name Nagarjunakonda is linked to the great Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna, founder of the Madhyamaka school, who had a profound influence on Mahayana Buddhist thought. Although historical records have not definitively confirmed that Nagarjuna lived or studied here, many legends and ancient texts associate this ancient city with his name, blending historical and religious elements in the perception of later Buddhist communities. Since 1960, the entire Nagarjunakonda Valley has been submerged under a reservoir created by the construction of the Nagarjuna Sagar Dam. Most of the major monuments were relocated and reconstructed on small islands within the lake, while many artifacts were moved to local museums for preservation. Nagarjunakonda is now a prime example of how large-scale irrigation projects can impact archaeological heritage, and it stands as evidence of the development and dissemination of Buddhism throughout the Indian subcontinent. The lost city of Tuam in the UAE. On Al Alinia Island off the coast of the Qatar Peninsula, archaeological teams have uncovered an architectural complex buried beneath sand and rock, including the ruins of dwellings, foundations of large structures, and fragments of ancient building materials. Initial excavations suggest this was a sizable settlement, far larger than simple fishing villages. According to ancient Gulf records, this place was once known as Tuam, a city that served as a key center for pearl harvesting and trade across the Persian Gulf for centuries in the early Common Era. Its strategic location at the gateway to trade routes made Tuam a hub for merchants and precious goods, connecting it with major ports in the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean. The pivotal moment in the excavation came when researchers discovered several mass graves scattered around the settlement, with burial structures displaying clear anomalies. In many graves, most of the skeletal remains belonged to young individuals, and there was almost no evidence of physical trauma, violence, or accidents, yet all appear to have died at the same time. Carbon isotope analysis and genetic dating pinpointed the period of burial to the mid-6th century, coinciding with the peak of the Justinian plague that swept through the Near East and Mediterranean. Additional data from the Tuam site record the abrupt collapse of local trade, as seen in the cessation of goods movement, pearls, imported coins, and numerous signs of abandoned construction projects. Oral histories from the region long afterward continued to recount a mysterious epidemic that forced the community to abandon their homeland, turning a thriving city into a deserted ruin. Combining all archaeological, biological, and comparative records with historical accounts of the Justinian plague from Egypt and Byzantium, it appears that Tuam was one of the major commercial centers erased by epidemic disease. The archaeological evidence of mass graves, the prevalence of young skeletons, and the timing that matches ancient plagues together provide a classic case study of the impact of pandemics on the social structure and fate of ancient cities in the Middle East and Gulf region. Ciudad de la Virgen, located in Guanajuato, Mexico, is an archaeological site representing the urban development of the Otomi people after the decline of the Teotihuacan civilization. Recent excavations confirm that this city emerged in the 8th century, right after Teotihuacan, the most powerful center in central Mexico, collapsed. This context has led to the hypothesis of a large-scale migration, with a group moving northward and forming a new community known as Ciudad de la Virgen. The urban structure of Ciudad de la Virgen reflects a continuation of spatial organization, ritual practices, and architectural models inherited from Teotihuacan, from public squares and temples to astronomical constructions aligned with the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. Archaeologists have identified clear evidence of stone construction techniques, along with ritual remains related to the worship of the moon, Sunday, and Venus, in line with the religious and astronomical traditions that flourished in Teotihuacan. However, archaeological records on the Otomi society at this site remain limited. The development of Ciudad de la Virgen lasted about 400 years, after which the city was abandoned in the early 11th century for reasons yet unknown. Current research points to the possibility that environmental changes, internal conflict, or pressure from external groups may have contributed to the dissolution of the community, but no definitive evidence has been found to fully explain this collapse. Although most of Ciudad de la Virgen's remains today are on private land and have only recently become widely accessible, discoveries here provide important new data on population movements, the role of the Otomi people in Mesoamerican history, and the connections between major civilizations through patterns of urban organization and religious ritual. The survivors of the Pompeii disaster. Decades of archaeological research at Pompeii and Herculaneum long suggested that most residents of the two cities perished during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. However, new data from anthropological studies, ancient texts, and material evidence reveal a more complex reality. The number of skeletal remains found in the layers of fossilized ash accounts for only a small fraction of the total population recorded in administrative documents, tombstones, name inscriptions, and Roman-era citizen lists. Excavations at various sites across Campania and other coastal Roman cities have uncovered records relating to groups of settlers whose names and origins trace back to Pompeii and Herculaneum. Some families have been identified as having re-established communities in Ostia, Puteoli, Cumae, and even further afield in central Italy and Sicily. Inscriptions show that these survivors not only lived on but integrated into the social, economic, and religious life of their new homes. Notably, families such as the Caltilia line built temples, joined city councils, and left traces in local records, property transactions, and public works, preserving Pompeian traditions in new lands. Combined with archaeological evidence such as horse-drawn carts, personal belongings, and coins found along escape routes, researchers now believe that a significant portion of the residents of Pompeii and Herculaneum escaped before the region was completely buried in ash. Other groups evacuated by sea, seeking safety in ports around the Bay of Naples. This synthesis of archaeological, textual, and material sources has overturned previous assumptions about the total annihilation of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Although both cities were physically destroyed, the legacy of their former inhabitants lived on in Roman cultural and social life for generations, offering a new perspective on the resilience, adaptability, and survival strategies of ancient societies facing natural catastrophes. Lost monastery. Lost monastery is the term used to refer to the ruins of a medieval monastery in England, believed to have once been connected to the lives of significant historical figures. According to archaeological records, this site stands out for its association with the reign of Queen Sinithryth, the wife of King Offa of Mercia in the 8th century. After the king's death, she withdrew from public life and retired to this monastery, marking a period of transition in both power and the role of women within the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy. Excavations conducted by the University of Reading uncovered the foundations of wooden structures, stone floors, traces of chapels, and objects related to religious life. However, most of the architecture has been destroyed, leaving only layers of sediment and faint remnants, making it difficult to determine the full scale and layout of the monastery. Written records regarding the activities and function of the monastery are extremely scarce, with almost no original documents describing in detail the life of the monastic community or its relationship to regional religious or political affairs of the era. Following Queen Sinithryth's period of residence, the monastery's role gradually faded from history. The remaining material evidence primarily reflects a continuous but unclear religious presence, leading to debate over whether the monastery continued to serve as a central place for worshippers, or was slowly forgotten and absorbed into the broader changes of church and monastic systems in England over subsequent centuries. To this day, the lost monastery remains a subject of study for many archaeologists and historians, serving as an important source for understanding social structure, the position of women in religion, and the transformation and disappearance of religious institutions in medieval England. The toilet goddess. In Etruscan and ancient Roman culture, the appearance of deities associated with environmental hygiene reveals the level of social organization and communal awareness regarding urban issues. Among these unique deities, the goddess Cloacina played a symbolic role for the sanitation system and waste management, demonstrating the link between mythology and daily life in ancient cities. According to archaeological studies and ancient texts, Cloacina was worshipped in Rome as the guardian goddess of the Great Cloaca Maxima sewer, one of the most important infrastructure works of the ancient world. This system not only helped Rome manage floods but also addressed the problem of urban sanitation, enabling the stable growth of densely populated neighborhoods. Cloacina's role extended beyond the physical realm, as offerings made to her in ritual ceremonies were seen as a communal effort to maintain cleanliness and order within the city. Cloacina's origins are believed to trace back to Etruscan culture before being adopted and further developed by Roman society. Some scholars suggest that this belief system reflects the transition between indigenous and Roman religious traditions, as evidenced by the mythologization of technical infrastructure. The existence of small temples, reliefs, and ritual objects dedicated to Cloacina is testament to the connection between daily realities and the spiritual world in ancient societies. The veneration of the goddess of sanitation was not only a symbol of the concept of cleanliness, but also a reflection of the Roman and Etruscan approach to urban planning, where community-serving works were elevated as part of the cosmic order. In this way, mythologies concerning environmental hygiene played both a spiritual and practical role, highlighting the sophistication of ancient societies in managing and protecting communal living spaces. The mystery of the chained skeletons in Greece. Beneath the ancient soil of Athens, a mass grave uncovered during the construction of the modern opera house has attracted particular attention from archaeologists. Within the Faliro cemetery complex, researchers found nearly 80 skeletons, their hands shackled with iron rings and arranged in layers. Most were young adult males in good health at the time of death, with no signs of disease or prolonged physical decline. The position of the bodies suggests a rapid execution. Many lay on their backs, arms stretched above their heads, mouths open, indicating simultaneous death during a violent mass event. Archaeologists dated the skeletons to the 7th century BCE, a period when Athens experienced severe social unrest and power struggles between the aristocracy and popular uprisings. One of the most prominent events of the era was the failed coup led by Cylon, a famous Olympic athlete, who attempted to overthrow the tyrant Megacles. According to ancient records, Cylon and his supporters seized the Acropolis but failed, with Cylon escaping while those who participated were captured and executed en masse. The archaeological evidence of chained skeletons fits the descriptions of this crackdown, although debates remain about the true identity of the victims. Chemical analysis of the bones shows these individuals were not slaves or criminals, but more likely belonged to the free citizenry of Athens, possibly young men engaged in political movements or rebellion against autocratic rule. The existence of mass graves like that at Faliro reveals the extent of harsh suppression exercised by the Athenian authorities against opposing forces, and provides insight into the structure of society and political violence within ancient Greek city-states. This collective burial raises many unanswered questions about methods of repression, standards of justice, and the political motives that shaped Athens during the transition toward early democracy. The specific identities, roles, and circumstances surrounding the last days of these individuals remain subjects for future interdisciplinary research involving anthropology, DNA analysis, and historical textual studies. Archaeological evidence from Faliro is an important resource for reconstructing the social landscape of Athens during the transition from aristocracy to the world's first democracy. The legendary metal orichalcum. Orichalcum was first recorded in classical philosophical texts, most notably Plato's works on Atlantis, where it is described as the primary building material for the city's temples and structures. From ancient Greece and Rome onward, orichalcum has been associated with questions of material value, metallurgy, and the real origins of this mysterious alloy. It was not just a myth. Some ancient technical documents reference orichalcum in connection with currency and luxury goods, underlining its importance to the Mediterranean world's economy and culture. A major breakthrough occurred in 2015 when archaeologists discovered 47 metal ingots identified as orichalcum in a shipwreck off the coast of Sicily. dating to the 6th century BCE. Analysis using spectroscopy and advanced chemical methods showed these ingots to be composed mainly of copper and zinc, with smaller amounts of nickel, lead, and iron. Their composition differs from common brass, giving orichalcum unique physical and chemical properties, most notably a color and luster similar to natural gold. The appearance of orichalcum in the shipwreck near Gela further supports the theory that ancient metallurgical technology had reached a remarkable level, allowing for the production of alloys with controlled qualities and high economic value. In addition to physical evidence, historical records indicate that orichalcum was used for minting coins, making decorative objects, or symbolic items. Roman coins have been conclusively identified as orichalcum through archaeological and contemporary textual analysis. The value of this metal was so great that, in certain periods, merchants and even officials exploited its similarity to gold for fraud in financial transactions or asset storage. Nevertheless, the original metallurgical recipe for orichalcum has never been completely reproduced in any modern experiment, despite numerous attempts to reconstruct it based on ancient texts and artifact analysis. The significance of orichalcum also lies in its symbolic and social status. It was prized not only for its physical properties, but for its cultural meaning, often appearing in legends about lost cities or powerful ancient dynasties. The connection between orichalcum and Atlantis continues to fuel public imagination and scholarly curiosity alike. Today, debates over the true nature of orichalcum remain unresolved. Some scholars argue that the discovery in Sicily reflects a refined ancient brass, not quite matching Plato's description of the almost gold alloy used by the Atlanteans. The greatest challenge remains the lack of detailed technical texts outlining the manufacturing process and the evolution of metallurgical technology over the centuries. This scientific uncertainty adds to the allure of orichalcum, demonstrating both the limits of modern archaeological knowledge and the unanswered questions about ancient material innovation. The discovery of ingots in ancient shipwrecks, together with physical and historical evidence, shows that orichalcum was not merely legendary, but a practical outcome of material research, development, and Mediterranean trade in antiquity. The giant Roman skeleton. During the excavation of an ancient Roman cemetery in 1991, archaeologists uncovered a skeleton of exceptional size, far exceeding the average stature of people from that period. The remains were identified as belonging to a male who lived in the 3rd century AD, with an estimated height in life of nearly 2.03 meters. This was extraordinarily rare in Roman society, where the typical adult male stood around 1.65 meters tall. Examination of the bones revealed numerous signs of a pituitary gland disorder, specifically gigantism, a condition that results in excessive growth hormone production. Analysis of the skull revealed trauma consistent with a pituitary tumor, which is considered crucial evidence supporting this medical diagnosis. Furthermore, the limb bones showed abnormal elongation and disproportional growth, typical of known cases of gigantism. Beyond its value for the study of ancient medicine, this discovery fueled debate in the scientific community over the origins of such exceptional individuals in ancient Europe. Some researchers argue this was a unique case caused by random genetic mutation, while others raise the question of whether populations with larger-than-average stature might have existed in the past. However, there is currently no archaeological evidence for a continuous presence of such individuals in the Roman population or neighboring regions. The Roman giant skeleton remains the clearest evidence of gigantism in ancient European history. This discovery not only provides a reference point for ancient pathology, but also broadens our understanding of biological variation in human history, while continuing to provoke debate about the morphological diversity of early human populations. The bottomless pit in Washington. Amid the forested mountains near Ellensburg, a modern legend has arisen about a bottomless pit made famous by a man named Mel Waters, who went public with his claims on late-night radio at the end of the 20th century. According to his account, Mel Waters stated he owned property containing a hole so deep that, even after lowering fishing line for dozens of kilometers, he never reached the bottom. Objects thrown into the pit would vanish completely, leaving no trace, further fueling speculation about the true nature of this geological feature. From the time the story first spread, the bottomless pit rapidly became a subject of widespread discussion, capturing the interest of mainstream media and researchers of anomalous phenomena across the United States. Subsequent rumors claimed the US government immediately seized control of the site, restricting civilian access, and was suspected of constructing a secret facility beside the pit. Local residents have reported witnessing strange phenomena in the area, including sightings of unidentified flying objects, mysterious lights, and even missing animals. Theories of alien activity, covert military research, or connections to other unexplained phenomena only added to the pit's mystique. However, geologists and natural scientists have pointed out that the existence of a true bottomless pit contradicts modern understanding of the Earth's crust. A hole deep enough to have no bottom would collapse rapidly under the weight of overlying material, filling in with debris or groundwater. Experts also note that, despite numerous searches and on-the-ground investigations, there is no verifiable evidence of Melwater's identity or the specific location of the pit on Washington's land maps or property records. Some suggest that the legend may have originated from abandoned mines, old wells, or local shafts, stories amplified through word of mouth into a modern folk legend reflecting society's enduring curiosity about the unexplained limits of the natural world. The story of the bottomless pit in Washington serves as a prime example of the intersection between popular media, modern folklore, and the desire to interpret supernatural phenomena through a scientific lens. Even without conclusive physical evidence, the subject remains highly popular, broadening the scope of debate on the boundary between science, legend, and the mysteries of the natural world that remain unsolved. Marcahuasi. The Marcahuasi Plateau, located in the Andes Mountains of Peru, at an altitude of over 4,000 meters above sea level, is known for its concentration of hundreds of unusual natural stone formations. Since the 1950s, archaeologists and geologists have documented many rocks here whose shapes resemble human figures, animals, and unidentified symbols. Some formations tower dozens of meters high, scattered across a vast area and forming a remarkable geological complex amid the barren highlands. Surveys reveal that the carvings and stone formations at Marcahuasi do not entirely follow the expected patterns of natural weathering. Some experts have questioned whether there might have been human intervention, though most geologists maintain that the features result from climate changes, erosion, and geological processes occurring over millions of years. To date, however, no conclusive archaeological evidence has been found of direct manipulation by ancient civilizations on these rock structures. Alongside scientific hypotheses of natural origin, Marcahuasi has become a focal point for debate about the possible existence of unknown beings. Some observers have reported traces of small tombs and passageways only about a meter high, raising questions about whether beings smaller than modern humans once inhabited the area. Others have speculated even more broadly, proposing that the site might be linked to non-human creatures or phenomena of extraterrestrial origin. As yet, none of these ideas has been confirmed through rigorous scientific investigation. Marcahuasi remains an ongoing subject of multidisciplinary research in geology, archaeology, anthropology, and evolutionary biology, and stands as a symbol of the rich diversity of landscape forms and the enduring limits of human understanding about Earth's ancient past. The ice monster Chinu, in Algonquin legend. The ice monster, known as Chu in Algonquin mythology, stands as a striking reflection of the profound link between a harsh, natural environment and indigenous beliefs about human transformation under the pressures of survival. According to legend, Chu was once a human being, but after falling into deep despair or being affected by supernatural forces, was transformed into a flesh-eating entity. This metamorphosis is portrayed as a consequence of psychological and social breakdown when individuals are forced to cross moral boundaries in conditions of extreme deprivation. The defining traits of Chu are drawn from exaggerated physical attributes, particularly its ability to grow in size proportionally to its hunger. These depictions mirror a primal fear of losing control over one's instincts and highlight the profound impact of a frigid environment on human physiology. In its monstrous form, Chu cannot endure normal temperatures, able to exist only in places of ice and cold, a symbol of radical biological adaptation amid the unforgiving climate of ancient North America. Traditional methods for destroying Chu, such as destroying its heart, using salt, or inducing vomiting, are not merely symbolic, but also represent a form of folk wisdom about factors that could weaken such a supernatural being. The heart is seen as the center of life. Salt is believed to disrupt physiological balance, and vomiting is a metaphor for purging toxins or abnormal states from the body. These elements reflect the interplay between early scientific reasoning and native belief systems. Culturally, the legend of Chu is a warning about moral boundaries and the destructive consequences of breaking communal codes. The belief in Chu's existence had a tangible impact on behavior, daily habits, and the way the Algonquin people interacted with nature. The story also serves as a way to interpret social phenomena such as famine, violence, or psychological extremity, and stands as testimony to how indigenous cultures adapted both practically and spiritually to the cold environments of North America. Today, ethnographic and sociological research considers the figure of Chu an exemplary case of how collective fear is formed and mythologized among communities living on the northern fringes of the continent. At the same time, this story demonstrates the remarkable adaptability and explanatory frameworks of traditional cultures, using ritual and symbolism to maintain social stability in the face of natural adversity. The fall of the Maya Empire. Archaeological research into the disappearance of the Maya Empire focuses on a multi-layered analysis of biological and environmental traces preserved in the sediment layers of Central American lakes and rivers. Beneath the muddy deposits at the bottom of lakes near sites like Itzan in Guatemala, scientists have uncovered organic materials that settled over thousands of years. By extracting sediment cores, researchers have traced the rise and decline of Maya communities across centuries. The analytical approach centers on distinctive compounds, specifically sterol and stanol molecules produced by human digestive activity, compounds that are stable and easily identifiable when accumulated over long periods in sediments. Changes in the concentration of these compounds across different layers of mud allow scholars to reconstruct population trends for the Maya through various historical periods. Spikes in these compounds reflect times of dense population and robust resource use, while sudden declines are matched by other evidence in the sediment layers, such as periods of prolonged drought, drastically reduced rainfall, water crises, and the collapse of large-scale agriculture. These cycles are corroborated by chemical analysis, as well as the presence of ash layers, charred plant remains, and changes in pollen structure within the same timeframes. The data reveal that during protracted dry periods, farmlands were depleted, water sources dwindled, and people were forced to relocate to resource-rich areas or abandon their cities altogether. Each phase of decline triggered shifts in social structure, sowed the seeds for internal conflict, city-state warfare, and ultimately, the collapse of the central governing system. A particularly noteworthy discovery is the abrupt change in population density coinciding with the Spanish invasion. Sediment layers from the late 17th century show a spike in human-derived organic traces, reflecting a mass influx of refugees fleeing warfare and genocide, as the Spanish advanced an event not previously recorded in traditional archaeology or Spanish colonial records. Through this method, modern science has provided the first indirect evidence of large-scale population movements among the Maya. The collapse of the Maya was not the result of a single catastrophe, but rather the cumulative effect of extreme climate events, resource exhaustion, social crisis, and the intrusion of foreign powers. The combination of sediment analysis, archaeological stratigraphy, and historical documentation has illuminated key factors behind the decline of a civilization that had flourished for millennia in Central America. The missing footprints of Indonesia. In a vast cave in Borneo, Indonesia, archaeologists discovered a prehistoric human skeleton dating back some 31,000 years. The most remarkable feature of this find was clear evidence of a surgical amputation of the left leg performed in the distant past. Careful examination of the remaining bone showed a clean cut and healing, indicating that the individual lived for many years after the procedure, the oldest such evidence of surgical limb removal ever documented in human history. Analysis revealed that the amputation was not the result of an accident, but rather a deliberate, controlled intervention, taking place much earlier than previously believed. Until this discovery, scientists had generally thought that medical surgery only appeared with settled agricultural societies after the Neolithic Revolution, about 10,000 years ago. Yet, this skeleton demonstrates that medical knowledge and infection control practices existed among hunter-gatherer societies in Southeast Asia long before that. Further study of the surrounding earth and burial context confirmed this was an intentional interment, with the body carefully arranged, suggesting an organized community that supported and cared for seriously injured members. This discovery is reshaping our understanding of prehistoric development in Southeast Asia, opening new lines of inquiry into the history of medicine and the biological adaptability of ancient humans in harsh environments. Researchers continue to search for further evidence to better understand the skills, tools, and living conditions of the people who performed this ancient amputation. The medieval rat catcher. In medieval European society, the growth of cities brought ever-worsening sanitation problems, providing ideal conditions for rodents to thrive. The profession of rat catching emerged as a necessary response to the spread of disease, especially during outbreaks of the Black Death in the 14th century. Rat catchers were typically drawn from the lowest social classes, hired to collect and exterminate rats, in exchange for fees from homeowners, merchants, or municipal authorities. Traditional rat-catching techniques relied mainly on mechanical traps, poison baits, and the use of trained dogs and ferrets. Beyond controlling rodent numbers, these workers also served as early warning systems for epidemic risk. By the 19th century, as European cities industrialized, the occupation evolved into a more professional service, with pest control companies and the development of biological and chemical methods. This evolution ran parallel to advances in medical science and increased understanding of the connection between rats, fleas, and the spread of plague. By the early 20th century, traditional rat catching gave way to the modern pest control industry, which adopted standardized sanitation protocols, specialized chemicals, and research into the life cycles of rodents to prevent infestations, not merely respond to them. The professionalization of this field laid the foundation for public health and environmental management as we know it today. Once looked down upon in the Middle Ages, the rat catcher's role has become an essential part of modern urban health and food safety systems, demonstrating the profession's transformation from humble beginnings to a critical component in protecting community well-being, turning points that almost changed world history. Throughout the long course of human development, history has been shaped by events that teetered on the razor's edge between dramatic transformation and the maintenance of the status quo. International historical records note numerous turning points that nearly altered the trajectory of world history, but ultimately stopped short at the threshold of almost. One of the most notable examples is the failed assassination attempt on Adolf Hitler on July 20th, 1944. Had this plot succeeded, the Nazi leadership could have been overthrown before the end of World War II, fundamentally changing the political landscape of Europe and the world in the post-war era. A similar case can be found with Vladimir Lenin in 1918. The failed assassination attempt allowed Lenin to continue leading the Soviet government, laying the groundwork for the formation of the Soviet Union and the entire geopolitical order of the 20th century. Had Lenin been removed from power at that crucial juncture, the Soviet Union might never have come into existence or might have emerged in an entirely different form, with consequences radiating outward to include the rise of Stalin, the Great Purge, and the global upheavals that followed. The collapse of Napoleon's army during the 1812 Russian campaign stands as another historical milestone where, had the outcome been different, the face of 19th century Europe would have been profoundly altered. The destruction of the French forces put an end to Napoleon's dream of continental domination, allowing the old powers to re-establish order at the Congress of Vienna. If Napoleon had triumphed, the chain of events leading to World War I and World War II might have unfolded in forms utterly unfamiliar to us today. Another military event with world-shaping consequences was the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in 9 CE, where 3 Roman legions were annihilated by Germanic tribes. This defeat halted the Romanization of territories north of the Rhine and preserved a linguistically and culturally fragmented Europe. Had the Romans prevailed, later models of European statehood, systems of law, language, and social structures might have taken entirely different paths. Not all pivotal moments in history are confined to the spheres of war and politics. The Black Death of the 14th century wiped out nearly a third of Europe's population, triggering sweeping socio-economic changes. But it was not quite enough to end the continent's development entirely. Had the mortality rate been higher, or the pandemic persisted longer, the global population map might have been radically redrawn. Similarly, catastrophic famines, economic crises, and near-collapse events, such as the struggles of the Jamestown colony in early 17th century North America, all serve as examples of tipping points that could have permanently reshaped regional and global history had the outcomes been otherwise. Analyzing these almost history-altering events reveals not only the randomness and fragility inherent in the course of human progress, but also highlights the pivotal role played by individual actions, weather, disease, political decisions, and unpredictable developments. Though alternate outcomes remain only in the realm of hypothesis, they help researchers gain a clearer understanding of the forces at work and the laws of historical change on a global scale. The story of the Neanderthal. In the long narrative of human evolution, Neanderthals once dominated Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, before vanishing completely around 40,000 years ago. The extinction of the Neanderthals remains a subject of ongoing debate, but recent research indicates that weapon technology played a critical role in their decline. Scientists have analyzed ancient weapons recovered from archaeological sites dating to the period when Neanderthals and Homo sapiens coexisted. The evidence shows that during their overlap, Homo sapiens developed projectile weapons, most notably arrows and spears capable of striking targets from a distance. By contrast, Neanderthal weaponry consisted mainly of short thrusting spears, designed for close-range use and reliant on physical strength and direct contact with prey or rivals. The emergence of projectile weapons revolutionized the hunting and combat strategies of Homo sapiens. This technological edge not only increased hunting efficiency, but also enhanced self-defense and the organization of social groups. As the two populations competed for resources and territory, the advantage provided by advanced weaponry may have been decisive, gradually pushing Neanderthals out of vital areas and leading to a steady decline in their numbers. Modern genetic evidence reveals that today's human populations still carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA, indicating that limited interbreeding took place before Neanderthals disappeared completely. Yet, it is clear that technology and hunting strategies were more influential than climate or disease in determining the outcome, reshaping the evolutionary order and hastening Neanderthal decline. Continued research into the weapons and stone tools of this era remains crucial for unraveling the dynamics of competition and transformation among prehistoric human species. The Star Child Skull. The Star Child Skull is among the most controversial artifacts in the fields of archaeology and modern anthropology. Discovered in Mexico in the 1930s alongside a normal human skeleton in a mining cave, the skull was later transported to the United States and became the subject of intense study by scientists and proponents of extraterrestrial contact theories. What set the Star Child skull apart was its large cranial cavity, rounded vault, prominent forehead, flattened cranial base, absence of frontal sinuses, and unusual cranial sutures. Early researchers pointed out that the ratio of cranial size to brain volume far exceeded typical values for children of the same age, fueling speculation about a possible hybrid between humans and extraterrestrials. However, subsequent genetic analyses and medical evaluations revealed that the skull belonged to a young child, about 5 years old, who suffered from congenital disorders that deformed the cranial bones. These anomalies were likely caused by conditions such as hydrocephalus or craniosynostosis, which increase intracranial pressure and alter bone development. Underdeveloped sinuses and a flattened cranial base are common in several rare pediatric syndromes. Scientifically, the Star Child skull does not provide evidence for hybridization between humans and any non-human species. Ancient DNA analysis shows that its genome falls entirely within the known range of modern human variation, with no alien genetic material detected. Nevertheless, the Star Child story continues to fascinate the public, thanks to its unusual appearance and the mysterious circumstances of its discovery, a classic example of how rare biological phenomena can give rise to legends and fringe theories in popular culture. Baphomet and the Templars. In the history of medieval Europe, the figure of Baphomet is inextricably linked to the story of the Knights Templar and the sweeping tides of political and religious upheaval. According to original records, the name Baphomet first appeared in the trial documents of Templar members in the early 14th century, during the period when King Philip IV of France and Pope Clement V launched a campaign to dissolve this military religious order. Under duress and torture, several knights were accused of worshipping an entity known as Baphomet, a being described in vague, inconsistent terms, sometimes bearing human features, sometimes animalistic. Many modern scholars believe that the name Baphomet likely resulted from a mistranslation of Mahomet, the term used by Western Christians during the Crusades to refer to the Prophet of Islam. Against the backdrop of cultural contact and religious conflict, such misunderstandings or deliberate distortions were often used to legitimize charges of heresy. The legend of Baphomet gradually spread throughout European folklore after the Templars' dissolution, helping to cement the image of a demonic figure in the tapestry of classical mythology, even though no such being ever existed. In the 19th century, the image of Baphomet underwent yet another transformation. The French occultist Eliphas Lévy reimagined the figure as a hybrid creature with a goat's head, wings, and symbols of duality and magic, a being that had little connection to the actual Templars, but became central in Western esoteric traditions and eventually fused with modern notions of the demonic and the arcane. The evolution of the Baphomet symbol is the result of centuries of linguistic, cultural, and religious crosscurrents. The journey from a misunderstood religious reference to an iconic image of evil in the collective imagination illustrates the profound influence of propaganda and political power on the creation of enduring historical symbols. The legend of Gonzalo Guerrero. Gonzalo Guerrero, a Spanish sailor, stands as one of the rare cases of total assimilation into indigenous American culture in the early 16th century. After a shipwreck in 1511, Guerrero and his fellow survivors were captured by the Maya along the Yucatan coast, now part of Mexico. While most of his companions were either killed or enslaved, Guerrero gradually adapted to Maya life, learning the language, adopting local customs, and eventually rising to a position of importance within the community. Historical accounts reveal that Guerrero became a military leader under a Maya chieftain named Nacan Can, helping to organize resistance against Spanish incursions. More than a mere outsider, he married a Maya woman named Zazilha and fathered 3 children believed to be among the first mestizo, or mixed race, descendants of Spanish and Maya lineage. Colonial records confirm that Guerrero tattooed his face, pierced his ears, and so thoroughly embraced Maya society that he refused to rejoin the Spanish ranks when urged by Hernán Cortés. Guerrero's choice has made him a subject of intense debate among historians, especially regarding the complex dynamics of cultural contact and integration. He is not just an exception illustrating the possibility of social assimilation, but also a symbol of the creation of mixed communities that would shape the demographic and cultural evolution of Mesoamerica. Rather than a narrative of conquest or conflict, his story exemplifies adaptation and hybridization, complicating conventional views of the encounter between Europe and the New World. Modern anthropologists and historians use Guerrero's case to explore early expressions of genetic, social, and cultural blending in Central America, providing a foundation for further study of post-contact social structures and evolving intergroup relations. From the perspective of cultural legacy, the legend of Gonzalo Guerrero offers a vivid example of the resilience and flexibility of human identity in the face of dramatic historical change, sparking ongoing discussion about the meaning of integration and assimilation in the development of multicultural societies. The Philosopher's Stone. The legend of the Philosopher's Stone has its roots in the Middle Ages and is deeply intertwined with the history of European alchemy. In ancient texts, the Philosopher's Stone was never merely a physical object, but also a symbol of ultimate knowledge and the transformative power of matter. Alchemical treatises by figures like Roger Bacon, Paracelsus, and Isaac Newton describe the stone's fabled ability to transmute base metals such as lead or copper into gold. Additionally, the stone was believed to be a key ingredient in the creation of the elixir of life, a miraculous potion said to grant health and immortality. The concept of the Philosopher's Stone is heavily influenced by Greek philosophical ideas, particularly the notion of material perfection. Alchemists viewed the stone as the purest state of matter, the pinnacle of a process that might take years or even decades of chemical, physical, and philosophical refinement. In works like the Corpus Hermeticum, the stone also symbolized spiritual transformation, transcending the ordinary boundaries of the material world. There has never been scientific evidence to support the physical existence of the Philosopher's Stone. Nonetheless, the legend has had an undeniable impact on the course of scientific development. Many Renaissance scientists and philosophers, from Bacon to Newton, dedicated years to the study of chemical reactions, laying the groundwork for modern chemistry on the foundation of alchemical experiments. Today, the Philosopher's Stone is regarded as a powerful cultural metaphor, representing the quest to explore the outermost limits of knowledge and material transformation. The historical records and literary works surrounding the stone continue to be analyzed, exemplifying the intersection of science, philosophy, and myth in the evolution of human understanding. Egyptian meteoric iron. Modern archaeological research in Egypt has produced strong evidence that the ancient Egyptians encountered, collected, and utilized meteoritic iron long before the technology of smelting became widespread in human history. Chemical analyses of artifacts have revealed that numerous iron objects buried with Egyptian pharaohs and queens contain exceptionally high levels of nickel and cobalt hallmarks of meteoritic origin. Among the most famous of these is the dagger found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, along with iron amulets, jewelry from Saqqara, and small arrowheads and knives from the Old Kingdom. These items were crafted thousands of years before ironworking technology appeared in the Middle East. Beyond the artifacts themselves, ancient hieroglyphic texts on pyramid walls and tombs frequently refer to iron from the sky. This term suggests that the Egyptians not only observed celestial phenomena such as meteors and meteorites, but also deliberately collected and exploited material fallen from the heavens. Meteoric iron was regarded as sacred, reserved for ceremonial objects or items, signifying royal power and divine authority. Most of these objects were not for everyday use, but were instead employed in funerary rites, religious offerings, or as symbols of the divine. This sophisticated understanding of the origin and value of meteoritic iron raises profound questions for historians regarding ancient Egyptian astronomy, cosmology, and natural observation. Their clear distinction between meteoritic and smelted iron demonstrates a level of material knowledge far ahead of their contemporaries. Both historical texts and archaeological evidence indicate that the Egyptians not only gazed at the skies out of spiritual reverence, but also consciously integrated the gifts of the cosmos into their material and spiritual life. Such discoveries have reshaped our understanding of technological progress and the role of astronomy in ancient Egyptian society, pointing to an era in which the boundaries between religion, science, and technology were fluid, yet still gave rise to achievements far ahead of their time. If you find these mysterious stories fascinating, please leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next discoveries. See you in the next video.